Hello there. In this video lesson we're going to show you how you can make your own personalized bracelet using an example of a catenoid curve. And so the bracelet you can create could be similar to the one that's shown on the screenshot there. Now the catenoid curve object itself, if we go to the Fluid Designer and if we go to the bracelets folder, and if we just scroll down the screen until we get to letter C. So here's catenoid curve, and we're going to look at this object here, 001. We'll perhaps look at 002 in another video. So if you just drag and drop that object onto the workspace, and I'll just switch on the screencast keys. Any key presses I make should be displayed down here. This is the catenoid curve default object. Now if we look over in the outliner window, you can see there's a little triangle here. Now this little triangle indicates that this object is a mesh rather than a curve. Mostly working in Fluid Designer we recommend you work with curves, but this is a different object. This is a mesh. And if I press the tab key on the keyboard, you can see what the default shape of this object is. So it's this profile which gives it the name the catenoid curve. And down in the help panel here it gives you instructions on how you could actually create this object using a mathematical XYZ function. So it's actually created by going to add and mesh, going to math function, and it's an XYZ math surface which is used to create this, and it's these equations here and these values that are done to create this object. Now I'm not going to do that in this lesson. We're just going to show you how you can actually manipulate this object once it's actually being created. But it is a mesh, this, rather than a curve. So if we press the tab key to come out of edit mode there, so what can we do with this? Well, if we look at the default settings at the moment, it's set up with an inner diameter of 65 millimeters. So it's not actually wrapped around this curve. The curve is just there to indicate where 65 millimeters is. So if we actually wanted to change the size of this, then we can restrict the visibility and switch off the selection of the default diameter. And if we wanted to make this 55 millimeters, we could switch on a different inner diameter and the selection of it. Now if we go to view and top view, so if we want to change the size of the inner diameter of this catenoid curve, what we need to do is we need to scale it down. Now at the moment the snap is on, and so if I just switch the snap off for a second and just point my mouse down towards the bottom right of the screen there, if I press S on the keyboard for scale, oops, I've got the inner diameter itself selected and not the curve. So yeah, I need to highlight the bracelet itself and then S on the keyboard and just bring it in until it's just about touching the 55 millimeter circle there. Now when you do that, you must apply this scale. So you do Control A and apply the scale. Now you'll see that it just jumps up, the diameter of it just increases very slightly as you do that. Now because of the shape of this, you're not going to get an absolutely perfect size there, but that will do. So that will give us I mean, it is a bracelet, this. It's not a ring where we really do need to be absolutely spot on. For a bracelet, you know, if we're a millimeter out, that's okay. But we're all right here. So let's switch the snap feature back on. And so there's our 55 millimeter shape. Now, what can we do with this? Well, if we want to create a different personalized pattern here, one of the things that we can change is this value here, the ratio. Now if I click on the left of this bar and hold down the mouse button and pull the mouse to the right, I can change the ratio and I can take it up to its maximum value of 100. Now if I just press the tab key on the keyboard and just flip between the two, you can see that the pattern that's created is that each of these faces, that each of these boxes here is a face, each of those faces creates a circular pattern in the bracelet. Now if we change the decimate ratio, so I'm just dragging the left mouse button, moving it right down, you can see that the pattern changes. Now the default pattern here when I press the tab key doesn't in fact change. Alright, so that doesn't change. But the modifier is in fact deleting some of the elements of this original default curve. You can't see it as such, but what decimate is doing is reducing the face count. So here we've got 193. If I just take it right back up to 100 again, here we've got a face count of 320. Well, if we were to go around counting all of these, there's the 320. That is the full face count. When we use decimate, when we take this value down, the face count is going down all the time. Unfortunately, you can't see that in edit mode. In edit mode, you've still got 320 faces. But that's what this ratio is doing. So you can play around with that ratio value, changing the face count until you get a pattern that you like. Now if I stick it right back up at 100% if you like, that's all the faces. Another way of creating patterns in here is to actually go into edit mode. So if I go into edit mode and if I just select one vertices there, be careful when you look at this, you can see vertices at the back face of the object as well as the front face. So I'm going to try and stick to selecting a vertices on the front face there. If I press X on the keyboard and delete that vertices, notice a hole appears. And if I press Tab key now, notice that I get a pattern on my bracelet. So I'm not using decimate. Decimate is still 100%, but I've reduced the face count because I've deleted some faces. I've actually deleted 1, 2, 3, 4 faces. So the face count goes down. So let me just do that somewhere else. Now I'm not going to, so I'll select that vertices there. And if I press X and delete the vertices, you can see the face count's gone down again. We were at 320, then 316, now 312. And we get a pattern there. So we could just keep going around here, deleting vertices, to create a pattern around the center. So that's one type of pattern that we can create as well. If I press the tab key to go into edit mode, now if I highlight that vertices, if I press X, now instead of deleting the vertices, an alternative is to dissolve it. Now if I click dissolve, you can see what happens is the faces themselves are not actually deleted. Here we've got a hole, we've deleted the faces. If we do dissolve, and I'll do it again over here, so I'll highlight that one. If we do X on the keyboard, and if instead of deleting the vertices, if we dissolve it, what happens is the faces themselves are not deleted. The vertices that was in the middle has kind of dissolved into the faces around it. So if we press the tab key and have a look at what appearance we get now, well, it hasn't actually changed anything in this case. We don't have any pattern here that's any different from before. But what we could do is we could try moving one of these vertices here. Now if I use the arrow keys to move it, it can in fact move it onto the inside of the object, or outside, it just depends on which one you select. That's not a good way of actually manipulating these vertices, so I'll just do Ctrl Z to undo that. What I really want to do is, if I'm going to move this vertices, I really want to move it along one of these lines here, one of these edges. And we can do that by doing Control V. This is a vertices. If we do Control V, we get the vertices menu appears. And one of the options on here is I could slide the vertex along the mesh. Okay, so I can slide it along to the right, I can slide it up, or I can slide it along to the left. So if I slide it up, I'll just go up halfway. Okay, so what I've done is I've selected a control point there. If I do Control and V, and if I slide, and I'm going to slide this about halfway down, and then if we select that one there and do Control V and slide, we'll slide halfway along there, and Control V and slide, and we'll slide halfway along there. Okay, so you can see I've created a 1, 2, 3. I've created a kind of octagon shape here. Now, if we come out of edit mode, you can see that this time the pattern has changed. So instead of getting this squarish pattern, because we've slid out those vertices, we've changed it into this more rounded sort of pattern. So that's sliding the vertices along. Now if we change the decimate ratio here, you can see that has a big effect on this as well. And wherever we've got these big holes, the effect of reducing the ratio is to make even bigger holes. So that's the decimate feature. Okay, so if we go into tab mode now, so we can delete, we can dissolve, and we can slide vertices along. We can also, if I click the right mouse button and go into edge select mode, I can select an edge there, and I could delete that edge, in which case you get a hole that looks like that. So instead of getting a squarish hole like this, we've got a more rectangular hole. Or you could select an edge there and do X, and you can dissolve the edge as well, so the faces don't disappear when you dissolve. We could also select an edge. Now if we do Control and E, we'll bring up the edges menu, and we could slide an edge. So as you can see, we can do that to the edge. So we select an edge, Control edge, and edge slide. So we could select an edge there, X, and dissolve the edge. X there, X, and dissolve the edge. And every time you do this, you'll get a different type of hole appears and a different pattern appears. Okay, so those are some of the things that you can do with the Catenoid bracelet to create different sorts of patterns. Okay, so yeah, that's it. That's the end of this video tutorial on using a Catenoid curve. But remember that this curve is in fact a mesh. We're only calling it a curve because it's actually these equations which are used to create the initial Catenoid curve. And we've not shown you that in this video. Okay, so that's it. Oh yeah, and if once you've got a pattern that you like, remember, don't go to File and Save, always go to Export. Now when you export it as a wavefront object, it will apply these modifiers on the finished object. So save it to the desktop, and I'll call it Catenoid Curve Bracelet. It's actually 55mm, and remember I changed the size of it, and we export that object to the desktop. and then of course you just run it through NetFab to create your finalized 3D printable file. Okay, so that's the Catenoid curve bracelet. Thank you.